thank you for being here.
No, thank you.
And this is not your first time.
Yes.
Like, you're coming to Washington,
Yeah.
truly advocating. And I want to say thank you for that. But let's talk about what you're advocating for.
Well, I'm advocating for menopause, perimenopause and menopause. I'm here on the Hill trying to get a bill passed that will be about providing more research so that doctors can get retooled, there are no experts in the field of the menopausal body, but it's also to create a bill that has real substance, because it needs money.
But let's start with
Funding.
that first part. Isn't that
That's
stunning
important.
that it hasn't gotten the research? Here we are in 2023.
I know. And every woman, if you live long enough, will go through menopause. And most women spend the longest period of their life in their pre-menopause or menopausal years, like 3 decades, right? So for there to be no information for a situation that every woman goes through and she spends a large majority of her life in is absurd. It's really absurd to me.
And no really substantive research, but that idea that it's not talked about, so people go through this often without really a kind of support group, without knowing what's understanding fully what's happening to their body, or what they can do to alleviate symptoms or help themselves navigate it with health.
Yes, because there's a stigma around it, and that's why I've gotten involved to try to destigmatize it, to let us understand that when we reach this time in our life, these are our best years, right? So to think that we should pack it up, or we should, not take our health seriously, right? Or just white knuckle these years, right? And not pay attention to all of the things that are going on with our body, I think is a real problem. And that's what most women do. We can't talk about it. And when we try to go to our doctors to talk about it, only 13% of doctors even understand the menopausal body. So they can't even help, really. They tell you to white knuckle it.
So when you started talking to your friends, before you even got to the stage of advocating for real change, what were your friends saying to you when you even brought the subject up?
They were like, girl, thank God for talking about this with me. Let's talk about it. Every time I brought it up, they just dove in because they were starving to talk with someone about it and not feel shame, right? And they were starved to share their experiences. And we realized we're going through a lot of the same things, right? And sometimes doctors would start diagnosing us, like my doctor told me I had Sjogren's because my mouth was dry. But it's not. It's just another menopausal symptom. Everything gets dry. And I mean everything, Cory.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
Gets dry.
I hear you.
Right? And it's another sign. And so I self-diagnosed myself. And guess what? I started taking omega-7s with buck oil.
Yes.
And I stopped drinking red wine because the tannins in red wine is drying. And guess what? My problem is gone now.
So how dangerous is it to have doctors not understanding what's going on and
Well,
misdiagnosing it?
mine told me I had Sjogren's. I was almost down the path of an autoimmune disease, right? But it was through talking to another woman who was going through menopause, and she told me the same thing happened to her. I realized, oh, well, this is probably menopause. This isn't Sjogren's.
And what did people say to you? Because I know you have this extraordinary career. Did people say to you, well, you don't want to go out talking about that now? When you started making the bold step to bring these subjects into the forefront?
Only men.
Only men.
There was no woman that said that. Every woman said, thank God. Only a few men said, I mean, it's kind of hard for women as it is. Are you sure you want to do that? I said, that's why I want to do it, because it should not be hard for women. And we should be allowed to talk about this, and we should have your support, man.
Yes.
So no, I'm not going to not talk about it.
Well, this is why I want to bring this to as many people that can hear it.
Yes,
because
and you're here, and you're a man, and you're supportive.
Yes.
So yeah.
And but it makes me kind of angry, I have to say, to know every woman is going to go through this.
Yes.
But yet, like so many things, the medical profession is focused on men.
Yes.
Even researches for issues like the study groups are overwhelmingly only men.
Yes.
And we don't understand a lot of the ways that drugs or any kind of sort of prescriptions affect female populations.
Well, until 1993, women weren't even used in clinical studies. It was only men.
Yeah.
So how could we possibly understand what we need when we weren't even a part of the study?
Right.
Until 1993. So I think it's really important that men understand it's also their issue too, though, because every man has a mother, right?
Yes.
You gotta have a mother. Most of men have partners, and if you don't have a wife or a girlfriend, you have colleagues that you work with, because women are everywhere.
Right.
Like
But everybody,
population.
whether they have a male or not, they should care about equity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the stunning thing to me is that here we are in 2023, and some of the basic things you're advocating for here in Washington, we haven't seen bills like that pass.
No,
Now,
we haven't.
it's not a surprise because we have a very male, still a very male Congress, male-dominated Congress here.
But we've got a few good men like you, and so far, all the women of the Senate, I think both Democrats and Republicans are going to come together
Right.
and really back this bill. So I think it'll be only the second time in history, if I'm right. If I'm wrong, you would know better than me, but I think it would be only the second time where all the women in the Senate would come together and back something. That would be huge.
It's extraordinary. I've already
Yeah.
seen signs
Yeah.
of some of my Senate Republican female friends in the Senate wanting to step forward and get on some of these bills.
Yes.
So maybe we should talk about that. There's a research component to this that you're
Yes.
looking to do,
Yes.
but there's also more than that. But why don't we start with the research?
Yeah, there's research because, you know, the more we know, the more we can pass to the American public, right? So we need to understand, how does menopause, say, affect early onset Alzheimer's or dementia or Parkinson's disease or heart disease, right? Diabetes, you know, and disproportionately black and brown women suffer in a greater way. So we have to understand the why of this and then try to fix the problem more holistically.
Right.
Right? And we can only fix it holistically if we know what we're fixing and how to do that. Like, for example, women in their 30s, if they knew how to arrive into their menopausal and perimenopausal years in a better way, they would.
Right.
If they knew. But we need research so we can document and get the word out to them. What are those steps that you should take when you're 35?
Right.
Menopause seems far away, but some women are going into it in their early 40s, so it's really not that
Right.
far away. You need to start thinking about it early.
And going into it and not knowing exactly what's happening
Right.
to their bodies.
Right. And so many women don't understand that
Right.
with menopause, not only we think about hot flashes
Yes.
and we think about brain fog, but there's so many other things that are happening to our bodies that are causing damage on the inside that we don't even know about because we're not feeling it like physically,
Right.
but it's happening inside, right?
And it seems like, and you said the word shame before,
Yeah.
but there are people that might feel almost embarrassed to come forward
Yes.
and talk about things we should be talking about.
Right, and we can't talk about it in the workplace,
Right.
you know, but there's $1.8 billion lost every year because women have to take off work, you know, so that's also a real problem. And that's a everybody problem.
Right.
That's just not a woman's health issue. Like, that's a real issue
Right.
that we need to also
And
consider.
then, and it's stunning to me that for any health condition, you usually see racial disparities. Like
Yes.
maternal
Yes.
health, we have the worst rates of maternal deaths
Yes.
during childbirth.
Yes.
And it's worse, though. Maternal mortality is worse for black women and women of color.
Yes.
And I imagine that's the same when it comes to the going through menopause and how it affects you physically.
It is because issues of, say, diabetes, I'm diabetic, but as a black woman, you know, we suffer, you know, more.
Disproportionately,
Yeah,
right.
than other women too. So heart disease, we suffer more. So when you go into menopause and all those things are heightened, right, there you go. You have a greater issue than someone else. But
Right.
most women don't know that.
Right.
We don't understand that. And most women, I was surprised to find out, didn't even know that there's a correlation between menopause and heart disease. Like, they just don't, they're always like, really?
Right.
Why is that? You know, they really have not been educated because their doctors aren't educating them either.
And then knowing is half the battle. If there's
Yes.
all of these correlated diseases that we could do something about to
Yes.
prevent that.
Yes.
And so the research, the bills that and there's a few bills. I know there's
Yeah.
one that you're working on with my dear friend Patty Murray
Yes, in the Senate.
in the Senate. And then there's another one about awareness in general.
Yes.
Is there something more than research and awareness?
That's the appropriations in the
Right.
Senate so that doctors can go back and get educated.
Right, so that's the
Right.
thing. I mean, people are going to a doctor, the retooling the medical profession is like, damn it, this is affecting
Yes.
more than half the population.
Yes.
Or will affect more than half the population, and you don't know anything about it. So when someone comes in, they're mistaking symptoms or diagnosing you with something wrong. So there
Exactly.
has to be research, awareness,
Yes.
and better education and training for people in the medical profession.
Yes. And that's going to also, though, take money, and this is the problem.
Right.
Right? Because,
No, it's frustrating to me that we have not made the investments in women's health in general, in maternal health like we should.
yes.
But obviously in this space, I was stunned when you and others had brought to me just the raw data
Yes.
of how much lack of research, investment, and training there is.
Yes. And we have to also start thinking about ways that, you know, insurance will cover this for women. Because say a woman wants to go on hormone replacement therapy, well, that's not, you know, that there's a cost to that, but not every woman can afford that. So this also needs to be introduced into the insurance, you know, healthcare system too, because it should be affordable to all women. All women should be able to, have access to these.
But what I love you say is like, this is not an act of charity. This is something that will help women, but it will also help in the workplace. It'll help save on medical costs. The more you know, the more you can do preventative care. It's just so common sense.
Yes, and it's a human issue. It's really not just a woman's health issue. It's really not.
Right.
It affects more than just women.
There's confusion out there too. I've heard a lot of confusion about hormone treatment. Could you say something about that?
Yeah. This is another big component to this education, because there was a study that was put out, over 40 years ago, and that study came out into the world, and everybody thought, oh, hormones are bad.
Right.
But I've learned, now I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you what I've learned, is that part of that study that was not revealed was that hormone replacement therapy, especially bioidentical hormones, they were only considered cancer-causing when women started later along their journey.
Right.
So after their body had been depleted of hormones, and then they decided sort of when their menopause was essentially coming to an end to now get on hormone replacement, that's when they had the problem with cancer. So it's about letting women know, if you start a hormone replacement therapy, if that's the route you decide to go, it's paramount that you start early in your journey.
But shouldn't we feel?
And then you can stay on them forever.
Yes.
I've been told, right? There's the risk is very low.
But this is what gets me a little bit just outraged, is we're saying the study.
Yes.
In other words, there's only been
There's
one done.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, you're
That's
generations of science and medicine,
Yes.
and there's been one study on
I
hormone.
know. But I have to tell you, Cory,
Yes.
if men went through menopause,
Yeah. Oh.
this would have been figured out.
Yes.
And you know it's true.
Oh, it's true.
So we're
Yes. How much study has there been done on erectile dysfunction?
Well, y'all got Viagra real quick.
Yes. Yes. Okay. But the one other aspect of this I think is really fascinating is diet.
Yes.
And access to healthy foods that feed your body and
Yes.
support you. And
Yes.
you've learned a lot about that as well.
I will, and I'll tell you my story.
Please.
I got diagnosed with diabetes when I was 20 years old.
What?
Yes, 20 years old. And because I was so young, they diagnosed me with type 1 diabetes. So they put me on 36 units of insulin right away, told me I'd be on it for the rest of my life. I happened to come across an Ayurvedic doctor on vacation one time, and he said to me, I asked, I can't manage this. This doesn't quite feel right. It didn't feel right in my gut.
Yes.
And he said, I don't think you should be on insulin. I think what you have effectively done by taking this insulin that these doctors have told you to take is you've shut your pancreas down.
Oh, wow.
Because your body wants to live,
Yes.
right? It wants to take care and protect you. So your pancreas shut down because you're giving it insulin.
Right.
So I worked with him for 3 years. He was from India, and he sent me herbs and vitamins and different foods and different potions for me to make. And after 3 years, I weaned myself off insulin.
That's incredible.
Right? My Western medicine doctor said, I want nothing to do with this.
Right.
Like, you do that, you're on your own. 3 years I got off insulin. I went on metformin, on oral medication.
Yes.
2 years after that, with eating right and exercise, I got off metformin, and now I handle it all with food and exercise, because food became my medicine. And when I changed my lifestyle, I changed the way I eat, I cut out all carbs, no processed sugars, was thoughtful about the things that I actually ate.
Right.
I'm healthier than anybody I know.
Which is extraordinary.
I
And it's
know.
not just you. I live in Newark, and there's a section of my city where we took an entire city block and built a farm when I was mayor. I went back recently to film the second version of a documentary called Food Inc.,
Yes.
talking about what these horrible processed, highly sugar-filled foods actually do to your body.
Yes.
And there we were filming, and these African-American women started coming up and telling their stories. And I'll never forget this one woman, over 80 years old, had been diabetic for years and years and years, and started sourcing this fresh, healthy, affordable, accessible organic food from this farm. Diabetes went away.
Yes.
And people, oh, it's a miracle cure, it's a miracle cure. No, it's about having access to healthy
Yes,
foods.
yes. And access to the information, too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We don't understand
Right.
how we can actually take our health into our own hands, right?
Yes.
And what got you on this journey? Because I know you're vegan.
I'm definitely a vegan, and the more I read, the more convinced I was that there was a lot of foods that we were making cheap. Like, most Americans don't know that we spend about over maybe just 8 or 9%, less than 10% of all the agricultural subsidies go to fresh, healthy foods that nutritionists tell us to eat the majority of. most of our ag subsidies go to the things that are highly processed, full of sugar. So in other words, it's the reason why in my neighborhood, if a kid goes into a bodega or corner grocery store, they can get a Twinkie product cheaper than an apple, because we subsidize everything in that Twinkie product and nothing in that apple. And so here you have communities where we're subsidizing the McDonald's drive-throughs, the dollar meal, all that kind of food, but the food that makes us healthy and vibrant, avoid diabetes and hypertension, and the majority of the diet-related diseases, which is the #1 killer of Americans, that those things are out of reach and more expensive.
That's right.
And so we're thinking a lot about the ag bill, because how do we begin to make these things more available?
Right. And how do we teach the younger generation that this is even important?
Right.
That they have to start seeking it out for themselves.
Because what you experienced at 20, 50% of Americans now are diabetic or pre-diabetic. A quarter of our children, what used to be called adult onset diabetes, a quarter of our children now are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And so my dream, because as you said, diet is related to how menopause affects you and perimenopause, it's affected to your diseases from hypertension, stroke, heart disease. It's to try to make an America where fresh, healthy, nutritious foods are far more abundant. We have things in the ag bill we can increase, like food stamps now. We have a program that gives double the value of food stamps if you go to a farmer's market, or to get the kind of urban farming that we have that can better help you access those healthy and nutritious foods. And so what my goal is that the building blocks for health, one of the most foundational ones, of course you want clean air and clean water, but fresh, healthy foods.
Well, I'm doing my part in teaching my children how important it really is. Like going to the farmer's market is a stay in our house, right?
But what I love you, in many ways, you're empowering others to make healthy choices, to have access to quality care, to have doctors that actually know the issues. And the other thing I think is important in life right now, and this is why I'm so happy we're doing this, is because so many people feel isolated. So many people feel alone. So many people are being made to feel shame because of who they are and what they're experiencing. But the truth is, we're not alone. There's connecting out there, and I'm just grateful for you for making the connection and using your luminosity to bring light to this issue.
Thank you, and I thank you too.
Yes.
I thank you too for being one of our good guys. It takes a few good guys.
Thank you.
On this journey that I'm on too.
Thank you.
So thank you.
All right.